shared on Wednesday night, magicians are, he calls himself now, illusionists.
That's right.
Which means that I want you to see something that's not really there. I want you to, by sleight of hand and shift of the eye, I want you to begin to see something that's not really there. I want you to begin to think that something really is here when that really wasn't the case. I want to begin to distract you over here while I do something over there. And you know what? Magicians have to work hard to make it look easy. It's just like folks who spend half their lives working on schemes and games, and the players have to work hard to make things look smooth. Now imagine what would happen if you actually dedicated that time, if you actually dedicated your intellect, if you actually dedicated your skill set and all the things you do to try to figure out getting over, to try to do something the right way. Now you can work on something that's real. Now you build on something that will last. Now you holding on to something that you have to work with. But the thing that happens is that in disappearing acts, we ask ourselves, why is there so many of the things that you thought you really wanted? All the things that you thought you really needed. All the things you thought, I got to have this, or I got to have him, or I got to have her. And all the things you got to do, you know how it is when you set your mind that you want something or somebody, you start laying down the traps, you start planting the sleeves, you start working on your game, you start dropping little lines, you start paying attention to things, you start picking up on things. All these things that start to happen, and it turns out that sometimes all the things that you scheming after, all the things that you working for, what happened? They never, once you get it, never quite really turns out exactly
that you need.
All the things that you schemed to try to get, all the things that you worked on trying to pull together, all the things that you had to overcome to sort of get those things, and it wasn't done with the right reason, it never really pans out exactly like you thought it would. Why is that? Something was missing. So what was missing? Secret. Secret to illusionists and magicians. One, you gotta understand that magic is not real. All the stuff that you thought you had and you were holding on to something, you thought it was magical. It's just magical the way we click. It's almost talking about love at first sight. And we just click and our minds just meld it together. And I just fell into his arms. And, like you've been reading the romance novels and all these 50 shades of gray and black and red and white and whatever other color you can shade into. All these other things that make you think you're like going to ride along on a white horse and just sweep you off your feet. And everything's going to be all right. And you're never going to have to worry about nothing no more. All right. Doesn't always work out like that. You thought you were holding on to something, wishing that things were going to work out like a wishing well. Oh, I wish it works out. Oh, I wish this goes through. And you dare even try to pray to God for something that you know wasn't right. The Lord can't bless your mess.
All right.
He can, but he won't. And all these things happen. When all these things happen, you building all these things, you know what? You should expect some point, somewhere down the road, you expect it to disappear. Don't be surprised when he gone. Don't be surprised when she gone. Don't be surprised at that job that you lied on your application to try to get the job when eventually they catch up with you and give you your pink slip. Don't be shocked. And act like you didn't know. Those things happen. And so part of what we're sharing today is, and my assistant is going to come and help. No, we just teach you. I told her I was going to bring the box and we were going to cut her in half. Put her in the boxes. Y'all pray for me. But the one thing that's missing, and we find this is Paul, if we go into the New Testament, and Paul tells us in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Out of all the things that you find out what's missing that allows your disappearing acts, all these things that you building, something was lacking in the things that you were scheming and pulling together, the things that you were working on, the things that you thought you were holding on to. It was still something that was missing. And Paul tells us some of the things that were missing. He says, one, he says, if I speak in tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. He says, if I have the gift of prophecy, that can fathom all mysteries. We're talking about the mysteries, all the magic. I can make sense of all the magic. I can work all the magical tricks. I can deceive the eye. And I can tell you I'm doing one thing and really be doing something else. I can be convincing when I tell you how much you really mean to me. I can look you right dead in your eye and tell you I ain't messing around with nobody else. I can be so convincing and so convincing and that you believe what I'm saying. All these things. He says, I can do all these things. Understand all the mysteries. But he says, and I can even have faith. Not only have the knowledge and wisdom to understand all mysteries, it says that I can even have faith. You got church folk. He says, you got not just faith, but he's talking about mustard seed faith. I can have faith that can move mountains. I can be in church and still working my magic. I can be in church and still trying to pull the rabbit out of the hat. I can still be on the committees and doing all these things and still not doing what I'm supposed to do. And Paul says I can do all these things and have a faith that can move mountains. But if I do not have love,